With the progressive nature and ever-growing number of anti-2A legislation in California, are we starting to see packages of anti-2A legislation form? We're coming to you live from the CRPA chapter meeting in Ventura County. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, we are not in studio for this one. We are coming to you live from Ventura County. That is a CRPA chapter meeting. As always, we continue to see anti-2A legislation come, perhaps now in the form of a package of multiple bills. Here to talk us through that today is the lobbyist for CRPA. He is the legislative director. He is also the host on AM 590 of the Firing Line radio show. That is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, Kevin.
As always. Let's just jump right into this, Rick. We see a lot of legislation that we've talked about on prior videos. You've got a registry coming for lockboxes. You've got a registry coming just for all firearms. We can kind of go through some of these bills as they are presented, but it seems that it might be advantageous to view these through the scope of a package presentation as opposed to individual bills. I mean, would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Just today, I got to talk to the legislature in Colorado because they're facing a lot of the bills that Californians thought they could run away from. And so, people moved to other states in the West, and now we're seeing the 11% excise tax that was Assembly Bill 28, Sensitive Places, Senate Bill 2, et cetera, being placed there. They're still doing them as one-offs in Colorado. But what we've seen now this year in California is we have a series of bills that are deceptive because they look like one-offs, but they're part of an overall package. We're seeing this in the hunting community, we're seeing it in the range area, and most importantly, we're seeing what we're now labeling as every gun and every gun owner.
So I can understand that when you have two bills that kind of mirror each other, sort of like AB 3064, which we've discussed prior, which is that was basically creating a roster for lockboxes. You put that next to AB 53, which enforces the fact that you can't own a lockbox unless it's approved by the DOJ, aka a roster. Can you give me some other examples, though, maybe in concert with those bills that you might consider to be a package?
Yeah, so when you look at a legislative package, what you have to consider is how each bill builds on something else to achieve an overall goal. The overall goal that people have talked about, and the argument could be made almost like crying wolf, is one day what happened in Germany, what happened in Cambodia, what happened in Guatemala, where the people were disarmed through a mandatory confiscation of firearms, could happen here. Well, people have heard that, Kevin, through every crisis from, we're trying to the year 2000, it could happen now, or, et cetera. But it is now happening. And what we see is, as you said, 3064, set up that, hey, we need to have a roster, and 53 says you need to put them in. Well, then comes Senate Bill 1160. And that bill very clearly says there will be mandatory registration of every firearm. There's not an exemption for law enforcement. The only firearms that don't have to be registered, they're exempted from this bill, are antiques, as defined in Title 18 of the U.S. Code, and firearms owned by law enforcement agents. And I want to make sure you understand the agency. So for example, like in a police department where the SWAT firearms are owned by the police department, those are exempted. Everything else those law enforcement officers carry, not exempted. All their personal stuff, not exempted. And so this goes after every firearm. But what goes further is they're trying to build a part of DOJ that can be the watchdog of all of our firearms. And so what they're now doing is setting this up so that you will have to pay a fee. They're talking right now $250 per firearm for an initial registration. And then you'll have to pay about 50% or $125 of that per firearm every year thereafter. And this is what is known as forced compliance. This is when a government sets out to try to change the culture. So you have people right now on the fence post saying, I don't know if I want to do that. They've now changed the culture. But it doesn't stop with that bill. It continues.
Okay, but thinking logically, aren't laws kind of supposed to work in concert with each other? Like you have one law that says murder is illegal. Then you have another law that says if you commit murder, that is illegal and you will be put in jail.
And we have 13,000 other laws that say you get out early because Gascon and Governor Newsom think you should.
Okay, so
So they're not in concert.
I guess I concede on that point, but overall, logically thinking, laws should be working together. How is this different from that?
Well, not to be funny, but I think the first problem with your statement is logic. That does not exist in our capital. And that's just a cold, hard fact. What we have and what a lot of people don't understand is a lot of the legislators aren't writing these bills. These bills are ran by other non-governmental organizations, and you have a lot of young people in the Capitol. They want to make a name for themselves on staff. They hand them these pre-written things, and they throw them up there. It doesn't matter how many times, and not just in the Second Amendment community. I see it all over the place. Things are unconstitutional, repetitively proven in the courts. You can't do it. That doesn't stop them from writing it, because you have to look at it from a legislator's point of view. They run a bill in any part of the spectrum. They get it passed, you go to sue it, it's 4 years. A lot of them are termed out by that time and on to the next office, so they never have to deal with the aftermath or unintended consequences of their actions.
You mentioned exemptions earlier. Something that we've seen in a lot of anti-2A legislation in the past are exemptions for specific groups of people. Are we still seeing that trend with legislation today?
No, the exemptions have been removed, and this is one of the things that I keep trying to sound the alarm on. There's been a hard pivot. You know, when Bruin went through, you and I talked about the fact that that was kind of like the Battle of Midway in the Pacific during World War II. The Japanese knew they were going to lose the war at that point, but they still threw everything at us and made us bleed on every island to take it back. That's exactly what the legislature is doing. It doesn't matter how many times we're in the court, they're throwing everything back, hoping to burn us out before we eventually get all the victories that are coming down from the Supreme Court. And that's why it's important to realize that you have to look to the mechanism. So you want mandatory registration, then mandatory confiscation. Well, what are the next two steps you have to have? Those next two steps is you have to have a licensing system, and then you have to have a way to enforce it. Well, the licensing system comes with another bill that has been presented, which turns your FFC, your firearms safety card, into a license that if you do not have it on you, you cannot sell, you cannot transfer, you cannot possess, you can't do anything with your firearm. And if it expires, those firearms have to be turned in. And the irony is, when they first sold this back in the 90s, many of us should remember, that was a $2 lifetime fee. So when I get people on the streets that go, well, the government won't lie to us. Are you kidding me? They have changed that $2 lifetime card 5 times, and the fee is now $25, and now they want to make a license that has, get this, your name, legally, your address, your phone number, your state ID or driver's license number on it, and trust us, we won't release that to anybody. We'll tell that to the teachers union that saw the CalPERS system violated this summer. Tell that to every CCW holder. Tell that to every fishing license holder who had all their information.
Yeah, I got to tell you, after we did the deep dive video on that one, I kind of walked away shaking my head, just sort of thinking to myself, holy smokes, there's been at least a couple times I went into a store looking to purchase something, and they told me that my card had expired. If that happens after this law passes, I get my firearms taken away?
Correct. And law enforcement, through a 6th bill that they're looking at, once they receive those firearms, they have to destroy them completely within 1 week. So even if there was a clerical error, a mistake made, by the time you resolve that 2 to 3 months down the road, doesn't matter. Your firearms are gone, and there's no recompensation.
Okay, so I guess I'm starting to see the more broad picture here, because then you add in, what is it, AB 3067, which is also requiring insurance agents.
Yeah, so this is the deceptive bill. So it says property insurance, which is a little different than they framed it before when Senator Blakespear tried to say gun insurance. It's called property insurance, but what it does is 2 things. A, it takes your insurance agent and makes them an agent of the state, because your insurance agent has to ask the following 3 questions. Kevin, how many firearms do you own? Kevin, where do you store those firearms? And Kevin, do you have proper insurance, and a couple other things. Then they have to report it to the Department of Insurance and the legislature, completely bypassing any legal entity. Know those entities are secure. And then what they have to do is, say you take the option of, just talking for a friend here, I'm not going to report this. Well, that means if anything happens and it is found that you had the firearm, not only are you going to be fined, not only are you going to be on what they call a wobbler, which, depending on who the prosecutor is, could be felonies for each one that wasn't reported, could be just misdemeanors, but you're going to get one or the other. The final hit to you is, oh, that fire that you had that triggered this, that flood you had that triggered this, the earthquake that triggered it, yeah, your insurance is no bueno. It is not going to work. An insurance company doesn't have to hold up because you lied to them.
So, so back to that broader picture, they're creating layers and layers. I guess the question is there a layer that if one of these bills or two of these bills doesn't get passed, kind of peels back all of them, or are they all sort of individually self-assured bills that together end up attacking the citizen from every angle?
Well, if you look embedded, each of those bills are references to the other four. And so, yes, on the first hand, they want to get them all passed, but this is California. Let's be honest. If they pass two, the other three will be back up in January or January the next year. And the argument will be, well, in order to make those other bills enforceable, these have to go through. All five of these have to be stopped, no matter what.
Well, and I guess not only that, because there are dozens and dozens of other bills that have to be stopped as well, bills that we will no doubt be communicating and advocating against as the legislative session continues to go. Any final thoughts on the purview of packages versus individual bills and the legislative session going forward?
Yeah, I think it's time that the people here in California realize this is every gun owner. And as I'm talking to more and more states throughout the West, helping them get caught up, two things you need to realize: the rest of the states are not even 10% as prepared as we are to handle this battle. They are struggling to get caught up with the CRPA and our colleagues at Gun Owners of California. And the second thing is, if you think you're going to run from it, you're not. You got to stand and fight here.
Well, I know that battle is not going to be easily fought, so I want to thank you for coming on to share with us today, and I want to thank you for the work that you have done, that you will continue to do, and I look forward to doing it with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content like this and want to continue seeing these videos, please, the algorithms are working in our favor. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Hit that little notification bell over there so that you get notified when we come out with these videos pertaining to firearms litigation, legislation, or the culture within California. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.